There's a moment that happens to almost everyone who's ever sat across from a mortgage broker. You walk in with a number in your head, the number that actually makes sense for your life, the number you calculated at home at 11 p.m. with a spreadsheet and a bad feeling in your stomach. And the broker looks at you, smiles, and approves you for almost double that number. And something shifts in your brain. Because if the bank thinks you can afford it, maybe you can afford it. Maybe you were being too conservative. Maybe this is fine. That moment, right there, is where it starts. That is the exact moment the system is designed to exploit. Because the bank is not calculating whether you can afford the house. The bank is calculating whether you can make the payment long enough for them to collect their interest before you default. Those are not the same calculation. Not even close. And today, I'm going to show you the number the bank never puts in that approval letter. The real number. Every cost, every line item, everything that will hit your bank account every single month for the next 30 years. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly who can actually afford a $500,000 house in 2026. Not who gets approved, not who buys one anyway and quietly falls apart behind a freshly painted front door. Who can actually afford it? Let's start with something almost every conversation about this skips entirely. The down payment is not your only upfront cost. On a $500,000 house, the standard 20% down payment is $100,000. Most people already check out at that number because the median American savings account holds around $8,000. But even if you somehow have the $100,000, you're not done. Closing costs on a $500,000 purchase typically run between 2% and 5% of the purchase price. That's another $10,000 to $25,000 due at the table, the same day you hand over the down payment. Title insurance, lender fees, appraisal, prepaid property taxes, prepaid homeowner's insurance, attorney fees depending on your state. None of that is optional. None of it gets rolled into the mortgage. It's cash, up front, the day you close. So the real barrier to entry isn't $100,000. It's $110,000 to $125,000 minimum. And that's before you buy a single piece of furniture for the house you just emptied your savings to purchase. Now, let's say you decide to put down less. 10%, which is $50,000. You're now financing $450,000. At a 6.8% rate, which is a realistic number in today's market, your principal and interest payment lands around $2,940 per month. That's the number on the approval letter. That's the number that sounds almost manageable until you understand it represents maybe 60% of your actual monthly housing cost. Because here's everything else that shows up every single month and somehow never makes it into the simulation. Property taxes. Depending on where you live, anywhere from $4,000 a year in lower tax states to well over $10,000 in places like New Jersey or Illinois. A conservative national average for a $500,000 home lands around $500 a month. Homeowners insurance has gotten brutal in the last 3 years. Climate change has done a number on the insurance market and you are paying for it. In much of the country, you're looking at $250 to $400 per month. And if you're in Florida, California, or any coastal market, those numbers are significantly higher and still climbing. PMI, because you put down less than 20%, runs another $150 to $300 per month. That is money that protects the bank, not you, charged to you every single month until you build enough equity to cancel it, which at today's interest rates could take 7 to 10 years. Then there's maintenance. And this is the one that quietly destroys people who weren't prepared for it. The standard rule in financial planning is to budget 1% of your home's value per year for upkeep. On a $500,000 home, that's $5,000 a quarter, or $417 a month. And that's not a luxury budget. That's a water heater that dies on a Friday night, which is exactly when water heaters die. That's an HVAC system that gives out in July. A realistic HVAC replacement today is not $5,000. It's $12,000 to $15,000. One repair can wipe out years of that maintenance reserve. and utilities, which always get left out of these calculations. Heating, cooling, electricity, water, trash, internet for a house that's larger than your apartment. Add $350 to $500 per month that you weren't spending before. So let's add this up honestly. Principal and interest, $2,940. Property taxes, $500. Insurance, $300. PMI, $200. Maintenance reserve, $417. Utilities, $400. Your real monthly cost of owning that $500,000 house is $4,757. Call it $4,800 because something small always comes up. That is what you are actually committing to every single month. Not $2,940, $4,800. Now let's reverse engineer what income that number actually requires. The rule that financial planners use, not the number banks use to approve you, is that housing costs should not exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. If your housing costs are $4,800 and that represents 28% of your gross income, you need to be earning just over $205,000 per year. If you stretch to 35%, you still need $164,000 a year. Banks will approve your loan if your total debt-to-income ratio is under 43%, not 28%, not 35%, 43%, and that includes your car payment, your student loans, every other debt you're carrying. The gap between what the bank approves and what a financial planner would actually recommend is not a rounding error. It's the gap between building wealth and slowly liquidating it one emergency at a time. Only about 10% to 13% of American households earn over $200,000 per year, which means the house that the market has decided is a standard, normal, non-luxury home in dozens of American cities is genuinely affordable, by any honest definition of that word, to roughly 1 in 10 families. The other 9 are either not buying or buying and spending the next decade learning the hard way why the math never worked. Let me show you what that actually looks like. 2 people, both working, both doing well by any objective measure. Combined income of $160,000 a year, which puts them in roughly the top 20% of American earners. After federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, and a modest 401k contribution, they take home around $9,400 a month. Subtract the $4,800 in housing costs. They have $4,600 left for everything else. 2 cars, because nothing near an affordable house is walkable in this country, cost $700 in payments, $200 in insurance, and $280 in gas. That's $1,180. Groceries for 2 adults trying to eat like adults, not like college students, run $900. Student loans at the national average are $500. Health insurance premiums their employer doesn't fully cover are $350. Phone bills, subscriptions, the baseline cost of existing as a person in 2026, $200. We are now at $4,130 spent against $4,600 remaining, and there are $470 left. No clothing, no haircuts, no car repairs, no medical copays, no emergency fund, no retirement savings beyond what was already subtracted, and no kids, because if there are kids, daycare alone in most metro areas runs $1,500 to $2,500 per child per month, which means the budget doesn't just get tight, it goes negative. This is what $160,000 a year looks like when you buy a $500,000 house and run the real numbers. Not the simulation, the real ones. Here's the part the mortgage industry really prefers you never look at closely. In the early years of your loan, almost none of your payment is reducing what you actually owe. On a $450,000 loan at 6.8%, in your first full year of payments you'll pay roughly $35,000 total. Of that $35,000, approximately $30,000 go to interest directly into the bank's pocket. You reduced your loan balance by about $5,000. You paid $35,000 and you own $5,000 more of your house. The amortization schedule front loads the bank's profit by design, and you won't reach 50% equity from payments alone for over 20 years at those rates. 20 years of making every payment on time, nothing in your life changing, the market cooperating, the roof holding, the HVAC lasting. 20 years. And this is the part nobody in that transaction has any incentive to tell you. The real estate agent's commission is a percentage of the sale price, so higher is better for them. The bank's profit is a function of your loan size and the interest you'll pay over 30 years. The seller wants to maximize their return. There's not one person in that room whose financial interest is aligned with yours. Not one. The system is built to get you into the house. What happens after you close is your problem. What makes this genuinely hard to talk about is that people are still buying these houses, and some of them seem fine. But here's what you're not seeing. Some of them have dual incomes in high-paying fields and genuinely have the margin to absorb this. Some of them have family money, parents who helped with the down payment, a financial runway that was built by a generation that bought homes at 3 times their income instead of 6 times their income. Some of them bought in 2020 at a 2.9% rate on a house now worth twice what they paid, and their situation has almost no relationship to what first-time buyers face today. And some of them are quietly drowning, and you just can't tell from the outside because the lawn looks good, and they haven't said anything yet. When someone tells you they own a $500,000 house, you have no idea which category they're in. You just see the house. Home prices have increased roughly 400% since 1990. Median household income is up about 160% in the same period. That gap is not a market inefficiency waiting to correct itself. That is a structural break between what housing costs and what people earn, and it has been widening for 30 years. You cannot budget your way out of a structural problem. You cannot side hustle your way to a down payment when rent is already consuming 40% of your income. You cannot positive think your way to a lower interest rate. What you can do is understand the actual math so that when someone tells you the payment is affordable, you know exactly what question to ask next. Affordable compared to what? The approval letter or your actual life? The question is not whether you can get approved. Banks approve people for amounts that will quietly ruin them all the time, every day, by design. The question is whether the life you'd be living inside that approval is the life you actually want. Because there is a version of homeownership that genuinely builds wealth, that gives you stability, that makes sense. And there is a version that looks identical from the outside while you check your account balance before buying groceries and tell yourself it'll get easier once you get a raise. Those two versions have the same address. The only difference is whether you ran the real numbers before you signed. Run the real numbers. Add up every cost, not just the payment. Check what percentage of your actual take-home pay disappears on day 1. Ask yourself what happens if one income stops for 3 months. If the honest answers to those questions still lead you to yes, then you've made an informed decision, and that's exactly what this should be. But if the numbers only work in the simulation and not in your actual life, then the most financially sophisticated thing you can do is walk away from a deal the entire industry is pressuring you to take. There is no trophy for buying a house you can't afford. There is no prize for being house poor. The system doesn't care what happens to you after you close. But you should. If this is the kind of content you want more of, real numbers, no sugarcoating, no product to sell you, hit the like button right now because it genuinely helps this reach the people who need to see it before they make a 30-year mistake. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every video on this channel is built the same way. Just the math, just the truth, no fluff. I'm Grant Hollis. I'll see you in the next one.